Okay, I'll call to order our Fortuna City Council meeting for August 7th. Can you join me for the flag salute, please? Roll call, please.
Councilmember Conley.
Present.
Councilmember Losi.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson.
Here.
Mayor Trent.
Here. Okay, now we have introductions of a new street maintenance worker too.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor and council members. Tonight, I just want to introduce you to Isaiah Stringer. He came from the Parks Department. He was about 7-8 months as a part-timer, and he moved over, interviewed and did well, and moved over to the street side of the full-time position. A little bit about Isaiah. You know, he's born on the East Coast, came from a military background. All know his father's Tim Stringer that does work in the park. So we got a father-son combo working for the city of Fortuna. And talking about military life, Isaiah did serve 8 years for our country with the Marine Corps. And so got out and lived in Colorado for a while, has one son, and he's been working here. And he's been working out well. So I want you to introduce you to Isaiah. Isaiah?
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to work for the city.
Can you come to the microphone, please?
Come on up.
I apologize.
They can't hear you on TV if you don't talk in the mic.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Good evening again. I want to say thank you for the opportunity to work for the city. It's my sincere pleasure to work for the community that I live in. So I'm incredibly grateful for all the opportunities that have been presented and everybody's support getting into a position with the city. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next introduction of a new conference center coordinator.
Try not to break it. Good evening, Honorable Mayor and council members. I'm very happy to introduce Mikey Murray as our new conference center coordinator at River Lodge. Mikey was born in Sacramento on a beautiful day in 1973. Vietnam was just wrapping up. After traveling to Humboldt in her 20s several times, she decided to move here when she was 30. Mikey bought a house in Ruth and lived happily ever after until it burned down in 2020. Previously, Mikey has worked for the state of California and as a landscape designer. And Mikey was looking for a way more fun job, and that's what brought her here to us. I am very excited to have Mikey as part of our team. She has already proved to me that she is up for the challenges that the River Lodge can throw to her. And Mikey lives in Eureka now with her 3 mastiffs, Boris, Sarge, and Casey. So I'm very pleased to introduce, this is Mikey.
Hello, I'm Mikey Murphy. Thank you very much for this opportunity. So before I was doing this, I was doing landscaping, and I kind of set a personal goal that, okay, by the time I'm 50, I should probably get a grown-up job. The job I'm doing is a little more practical if I was 20 and going to college, but not turning 50. So by my 50th birthday, I was like, I'm going to have a full-time job either with the state, city, or county, and this was my very first choice. So Cameron called me on my 50th birthday, and I thought, no way. Oh my gosh, to tell me, nope, sorry, we chose someone else, you're second place. So I was like, okay, fine. So a week to the day later, Jennifer called me and said, hi, this is Jennifer, the person didn't work out, would you like the, yes. I didn't even let her finish, I said yes. So I am so excited to be here. This was my first choice. I'm loving every minute of it. Everybody has been so supportive. thank you to this man over here, Cameron. Jennifer was on vacation, and I made him my accomplice twice with TPAR, my very first transactions and my very first wedding, and he has been so supportive and encouraging. He came down and made a special trip to make sure that I was okay while Jennifer was on vacation, and I just have to say thank you to Jennifer. I don't know about on her end, but my end, it's like coming to work with a really good friend. She just makes it a very fun, positive, amazing work environment, and I got my number one choice, so I'm really happy to be here. Thank you to everybody. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Now we have a Parks proclamation, and Mike Losey is going to read that.
It would be my pleasure. Termed Parks Make Life Better Month, July 2023. Whereas Parks and Recreation makes lives and communities better now and in the future. Whereas residents value recreation as it provides positive alternatives for children and youth to reduce crime and mischief. It promotes the arts, it increases social connections, aids in therapy, and promotes lifelong learning. Whereas residents value their parks for access to outdoor spaces for children and adults to play and be active, exercise, and group sports. Whereas parks provide access to the serenity and the inspiration of nature and outdoor spaces, as well as preserve and protect the historic, natural, and cultural resources in our community. Whereas the residents of Fortuna, including children, youth, families, adults, seniors, businesses, community organizations, and visitors benefit from the wide range of programs throughout the parks and recreational facilities provided by the Fortuna Parks and Recreation Department. Whereas the Fortuna Parks and Recreation Department urges all its residents to recognize that Parks and Recreation enriches the lives of its residents and visitors, as well as adding value to the community's homes and neighborhoods. Whereas July is celebrated across the nation as Parks and Recreation Month. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the City of Fortuna hereby proclaims July 2023 as Parks Make Life Better Month, and in doing so, urges all its citizens to use and enjoy its parks, trails, open space facilities, and recreation opportunities. Signed this day, 7th of August, 2023, at the City of Fortuna, State of California, by Mayor Tammy Trent.
I didn't sign it yet. I got to sign it. Thank you. Our next item is Fortuna Fire Department Quarterly Report. Chief Brown.
Honorable Mayor Trent and Council, thank you for the opportunity to update you guys. So I'll go through our calls to year currently. Currently, we're at 890 requests for service. That is a 65% medical aid breakdown. Also equates to about 4 calls a day. 52 fires, 5 of those were structure fires. Rescue and medical, 533, 447 medical aids, and 39 traffic accidents. 31 hazardous conditions, 89 calls for service, majority of those are lift assists. 119 good intent calls, that's where our smoke checks come in, so 39 of those were smoke checks. And I will say, just because you call doesn't mean it's illegal for them to burn. Because I get people all the time, that, why are you leaving and there's smoke still coming from their yard? Because they weren't doing anything wrong. Fire alarms and false calls, 66 of those. And so that makes the total of 890 requests for service so far this year. In our planning and our staffing program is currently about, I would say, 60 to 65% staffed. We are currently working with Cal Poly Humboldt and CR with their fire technologies program to try and merge our programs together to see if we can provide them with a place to stay and and in turn, they provide us with some people to respond to medical aids. And it's worked somewhat with CAL FIRE. With CR, it hasn't worked so well with Humboldt, but we're hopeful this year we can pick up some folks out of there as well. Because our goal is to stay a volunteer department. That's getting harder and harder to do. People don't volunteer for anything anymore, and when you put the amount of time it takes to volunteer as a firefighter, folks just aren't choosing that anymore. And so, we don't seem to struggle with big calls. The Main Street fire is a perfect example. We had 33 people on that fire. But it's the, pick up Granny at 3 in the morning call, or it's the, fire at Old Palco lot that we don't seem to get too many people to show up for. So we're trying all different types of incentive programs to encourage our folks to volunteer. But that is our one of our biggest things right now is how do we maintain and retain our people and get them still actively engaged and involved in what we do. Some of our funding opportunities, we recently had a grant, a donation of over $3,000 by Primal Running's Aaron Stacy. He's also one of our local CHP officers. He ran on a treadmill for 100 miles. It started in one day and finished the next. And then he had another 100-mile race that he took donations from. And it was earmarked specifically for our Eel River Valley Fire Academy. We are the only people that put on a fire academy. Southern Humboldt, started one last year now. But until then, we are the only one that serves all the departments in the valley, from Bridgeville to Red Crest. We pick up people from Blue Lake and West Haven and whatnot. But that was earmarked specifically for that because we don't have a funding source for that academy. Fortuna has paid for that academy out of our own money, never charged any of the other departments anything to attend that. Instructors aren't paid, but plywood costs money. And it's hard to buy a brand new piece of plywood and go cut holes in it and throw it away. But that's what we have to do. And so, our propane bill was $1,800 alone last year for our tower. So that money will definitely come in handy, and we can't thank Aaron enough. If you see Aaron, say thank you, because great gesture, great man. Could have donated that money to anybody, and he chose our group to donate it to. So we want to thank him. We've also started a support program. So we get people that call us and want to help, but they can't fight fires. And so we started a support program. So if they want to serve in some other capacity, maybe they have some IT skills, or maybe they just like washing fire trucks. So if anybody is interested in that, they can contact us at the station, and we'll give them the information on what it takes to be a support member. That's also where our CERT program lives. And I understand you guys are going to be doing something for the CERT program maybe next month or something like that. I saw something in an email. And that takes somebody that's dedicated to that. And we have one of only 2 CERT teams in Humboldt County. They've already been put to work, and they are a good addition to what we offer. We are the sponsoring agency for them. And so that falls under our support group as well, because they don't obviously fight fires, but they can take a certain load off from us during disasters. And so we're appreciative of Enoch and his running of that program. Some of our major projects, as most people have seen now, our station on Ronerville Road is nearing completion. I think by the end of the year we might be in there. Still waiting to find out how much it's going to cost me to hook up to PG&E. That station replaces one that's 58 years old. The campsite station has not been able to accommodate modern fire apparatus for years, and we're just at a point now where we're forced to, we're updating equipment, updating apparatus, and nothing will fit in there. And so that was part of the push to build this station to begin with. Plus, that's a really bad location. We've had multiple of our vehicles struck by other cars, multiple firemen that have dodged cars trying to run across the street. It's just an outdated facility. The new facility is just the opposite of that, and it's probably better situated for the response to that area anyway. We're finding less and less of our folks in Hydesville that are stepping up and volunteering, and so putting it a little bit closer to Hydesville. And I think that what you're going to see is some of our folks will start responding there instead of responding downtown. There's folks that kind of live in the middle that could go either direction, and so I think we'll see an increased response up there. One reason being is my next item, which is we are anticipating our arrival of our new engine, a new apparatus. It was driven from Wisconsin, where it was manufactured, to Sacramento last week. The dealer takes it, and they have it for a month to do all the prep work and make it shiny and pretty, and they deliver it to us. So we anticipate in a month having that new apparatus. That new apparatus Right now, I believe we paid $668,000 for that apparatus, and they told us at the factory if we ordered it today, it would be $880, and it's a 52-month wait. So that's how long it takes to get a fire truck built these days. It may be the last new apparatus you see us buy. There's a lot of good used stuff out there that may become an option for us. But that should be here in a month. It will live in the main station downtown. It will take the place of the first out engine. That first out engine will now go to the Camptonite station or the new Ronerville station. It won't fit in the Camptonite station. So I'm hoping my building gets built about the same time I get an engine so I can slide it right in there. If not, we'll have to stage it somewhere for a while. That will change the Camptonite's response from a 3-person cab to a 6-person cab. That's huge. And that's why I think we'll see some of those folks respond to there, because now there's a chance to make that apparatus. Now there's a chance to make a seat where you only had a chance to get, you had to be pretty close to get the first 3 seats available. Now there's 6. Now we've doubled that capacity, which brings me to my next item, which is we just had our 5-year ISO audit. ISO is the Insurance Services Office. They kind of rate you on how good of a fire department you are. 1, you're the best fire department in the world. 10, you're the worst. We are currently a 4. We are hopeful to be a 3. Humboldt Bay was a 3, Eureka's department, they just went to a 2. So an all-volunteer department to be a 3 is a pretty cool thing if we can pull it off. We were 5 points short last time, and we do it every 5 years. We've added hydrants in the metropolitan area. There's been upgrades to cities' water. So all that stuff matters. And like I told my folks, if you wonder if attendance matters, it did when I sat down with that man. It matters every 5 years. It matters what our communication system is like, and so what dispatch does for us matters. Because we actually have 60% of that outside of our control, which is water and communications or dispatch. And so the stuff that you guys do to help us, to help the citizens of this town, makes a difference. And what it does is it lowers your insurance rate. It lowers your insurance rate for your residents, and right now we're working on lowering the insurance rates for the commercial properties in our community. So I'd like to say thank you to Sergeant Cadle for helping me, Chris Christensen, Jesse, Andy Bowles, they were all there to supply me. I just gave them paperwork and they provided it back to me. I can't do that. I don't know those things. And so it's grateful the communications that we have and the working relationship we have with city staff, with the police department, because I want you guys to be as good as you can, because I need those 5 extra points. And to put it in perspective, if communications, if dispatch was 100%, it's only 10 points. And they were 7.9 before, I think, and we've made some improvements there. Things that you wouldn't think matter. Having a generator that is tested on a regular basis gets you half a point. So those kinds of things do make a difference, and so I really appreciate city staff for helping me get that stuff together. We won't know, he said, for probably 45 days where we're going to come out of that. I know we're not going to go backwards. I mean, we're not going to go from a 4 to a 5, but I'm hopeful that we can get to a 3. 5 seems like a small number, but when you add everything up, you're talking 0.2 for this and 0.6 for that, and so to get to 5 is a task, but I'm hopeful that we'll get there, and I'll certainly be ecstatic the next time I come to you guys, with my quarterly report. I should have that information, and we should be able to all, put a feather in our hat and say thank you to cities, thank you to the fire department for providing that service and getting that number reduced, because we've never been a 3. It'd be cool to be a 3, and I think we can get there. I really do. And that's my report. I'll answer questions if anybody has any for me.
Questions?
Real quick.
Mike always does.
I always do. The recruits going through the academy, do they pay a portion, like tuition or anything?
No, we've never charged anybody. We've absorbed that ourselves. We typically have the most attendees. Fortuna has the most attendees in the class. And so we've always tried to absorb that ourselves. Other departments have offered to pay. We've also got donations from insurance companies. So insurance companies have always funded us in the past when we've needed like new books. Books last about 3 years before they're just not usable anymore, and they're $300 a piece. And so we've got some money from the insurance companies because they see the benefit to a better fire department. And then, like I say, with Aaron's, giving us over $3,000, that allows us to maybe even get a year or two ahead in supplies, so that we're not having to go back. Because some of these departments can't. They don't have a funding source, and they just won't send their people. And so we've even thought about making a scholarship program for some of those smaller departments that don't really have maybe they're not a district, they're a department, so they can't get tax money, but they'd send their person if it was free. Well, we might be able to sponsor that if we keep getting those kinds of donations earmarked specifically for our academy.
I'm just curious, with the Campton Heights, the old station, do you have plans on that? Is it going to be declared surplus? Or?
Yeah, so one of the things that came up at our ISO audit was, what if we put a surplus engine there? Do we get credit for that? And he said, I don't know. I'll work up the numbers both way, and we'll see. Because the engine that's being replaced is the engine that's in there now, so it fits. I just don't know whether or not. He made it seem like, well, if you're just moving your people to the other station, it's the same people that would, you're splitting your people. I don't know that that gives you any more points. So we're looking at all options. I would love to keep it. I'd love to put my antique apparatus there because it's scattered throughout our other stations as it is now. And we've had a presence in that location, since '63. So it'd be kind of cool to keep it. But that's up to my board. Right now money's tight. So we've got plenty of people that want to buy it. We get approached all the time with people that want to use that as a shop space or something like that, because that's needed in this town. So there's certainly not, there's no lack of people that are interested in it, Mike.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you, Russ. Great report.
Our next item is Fortuna Police Department Quarterly Report.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Trent, Honorable City Council. It's my pleasure to present the biannual report this evening. This is a abridged version, so we're going to move through here fairly quickly. Brass tacks, morale in the department is extremely high, and I'm proud to announce that crime is not thriving in our city. So on this particular slide, what I have for you is a 2022-2023 comparison. These are enforcement statistics only and should not be confused with crime trends up or down. What we saw this year in 2023 was a raise in total incidents by about 9%, 30% raise in overall arrests, 27% in felony arrests, and about 49% more citations issued than this reporting period last year in 2022. So again, these numbers, the increases don't really equate to rises in crime. We'll kind of get into that here in a second, but can be more attributed to like post-pandemic enforcement levels. So the officers coming out of the pandemic have become more and more proactive as time has gone on, and so we're starting to see more arrests and more citations being issued. Domestic violence pretty much stayed consistent with our numbers from last year. From January to June, 41 total DV-related calls for service, 11 felony, 10 misdemeanor, 14 physical arrests were made, with 6 cases being submitted via the complaint process for an arrest warrant. 16 of the additional cases were determined not to be as reported, so they don't fit into the overall statistical number of 41. Getting into where we are with the Group A crimes, typically in the past we've talked about Type 1 crimes with the UCR. These are the NIBRS-based reporting system. You can see that we decreased in the 10 reportable areas in Group A. We were down in 7 of the 10 areas. We had slight increases shown in this slide in the color red. 1 more criminal homicide this year. We had 2 more aggravated assaults, and we almost doubled our stats for burglary. So burglary has become more of an issue this year than it was last year. So in total, crimes against persons are down about 10%. Crimes against property are down about just under 40%. And total crimes in Fortuna are down about 17.39%. For staffing and recruitment, we're currently down 1 police officer position and 1 public safety dispatcher position. We have candidates that are, for the police officer position, that are in background, and a candidate that's been selected for background for the dispatcher spot. Finally, just talking about programs that have kind of gone to the wayside in previous years. We're slowly bringing those back. That started with the K-9 program when I first came over 3.5 years ago. And proud to say that the Explorer program has returned to the department and the city. We now have 6 Explorers that assisted us not only with some of our events over the summertime, 3rd of July, the rodeo events, Auto Expo, but are continuing to learn and assist, just with basic ride-alongs and patrol functions. We're very happy to have the Explorers. Actually, we'll be looking to introduce them at the next council meeting. And we're just very, very appreciative to have that assistance and provide a platform for which we can, train these young men and women who, maybe later on down the road that becomes a recruitment bank for us. So things are going good with the Explorer program. And that concludes this year's report. If there are any questions.
Any questions from council?
That's short.
I gave you my word.
I do. So the Explorers are they all from Fortuna High School?
Yeah, so we recruited specifically using the school resource officer through the Fortuna High School district, and so all of our current Explorers are from Fortuna High.
Great program, and I'm glad to see it on board. So
Yeah.
Great report.
Thank you.
That's it?
That's it.
I was just going to make a comment. I think we have great officers and staff, leadership, now with the Explorer program, and I think all that working together and a presence on the street can explain that nearly 17.5% decrease. And so,
Yeah, I mean, it just adds to our visibility out there, and, it's really quite something to free up some of our sworn officers to deal with more significant issues, when we have Explorers that, are trained in and can perform the duties of traffic control.
Recording
it just really
stopped.
frees up our resources and allows us to address things more appropriately.
thank you.
Recording in progress.
That's okay. Any other questions? Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Okay, our next item is oral comments from the public. Anybody from the public can make a comment on anything that does not pertain to the agenda and has 3 minutes.
Good evening again, Chief Day, Fortuna PD. I just wanted to take a second. I know we have a long agenda, but I wanted to focus some public attention and appreciation to the merchants on Main Street, and specifically Ferndale Jewelers for this past Friday. We had a series of events throughout the city, as you know, called First Friday, and Ferndale Jewelers and the merchants turned that into a K-9 fundraiser. We had a dunk tank. Yes, I was dunked several times. The mayor was there to witness that. But just a big thank you to everyone who participated. The merchants raised for us just under $500 for the K-9 program. So thank you very much.
I was going to sit down and say this, but I can't not after seeing that. So I just wanted to give a brief update, Brendan Bird, Public Works Director, on a few projects that we have going right now. Most notably, we have the construction out on 12th Street. I know there's been a lot of questions about the timeline for the project and when that's going to be completed, and also recognizing this Wednesday, the 9th, is when the kids will be coming back to the high school. So we are hopeful that we're in the week to week and a half timeline countdown from being completed with the project. And we are moving towards hopefully getting at least one-way traffic up through the work area done by the time the kids coming back, recognizing that there'll be a much larger demand than is during the summer. So we appreciate everybody's patience as we've been moving through the project. We're generally on schedule and things are moving well, but there'll just be a little bit longer where we have some holes out there that need filling. So on top of that, I just want to note one of the other larger projects we have is our water tank coating project. Right now, Hillside Tank has been completely finished and is back operational. We hope that Campton will follow suit here in about 2 to 2.5 weeks as well. And that project has been going very smooth, and we appreciate any efforts folks have been making to conserve water demand during that time. Every little bit helps when we're in temporary operating conditions. So the last project that is big happening right now is, of course, the police facility. That has been making really good progress, and we actually just today poured the foundation for the new radio tower. So we're getting pretty close to defining the full new exterior footprint and continuing to work on the various aspects inside. So we still anticipate the project being complete somewhere early in 2024, which is a slight growth from where we started with, but we've also been having to expand the project definition a little bit as issues have come up, nothing outside of the ordinary. So we're excited there, and things are starting to take shape, and we think we're going to have a great project for our great staff in the police department. So thank you.
Can I ask you a question?
Sure
I have
thing.
a lot of people asking me what the 12th Street project is. Could you explain that? briefly?
Absolutely. So we are extending the underground storm drain system from I Street to K Street, which K Street is in front of Bob's where everybody's working now. So before there was no storm drain, now there is a storm drain in addition to a number of rain gardens. So it'll be a means to get water off the road and out of the gutters and out of the ground, but also to put water in the basins in the meantime to help alleviate how much trash and other things hit the creeks instantly through the pipe.
That'll
So
take care of the flooding by Bob's?
yes, it should help. It should help get water off the road, get rid of some of that, and help address, again, some of the trash and pollutant issues that come up as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Good evening, Council. Michelle Bushnell, Humboldt County Supervisor, 2nd District. Last week in the paper, there was an article, an individual in the Fortuna area, and I would like to come to the council to thank Chief Day and his department for the seriousness that they took and the action that they took. Very much appreciated by myself and my coworkers, and I just can't thank him enough and his department.
Thank you, Michelle. Anyone else? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Our next item is consent calendar. We have 14 items on the consent calendar. City council minutes, all the departments' monthly reports, report of disbursements, declaration of surplus personal property, and authorization to dispose of surplus personal property. Supplemental budget request for additional part-time recreation staff hours. Approve annual property tax assessment for the following districts. Ratify First Amendment to employment agreement for finance director. Approve allocation of 2 new part-time park maintenance worker positions and 1 permanent. Anybody want to pull any of those?
Just a question on K.
Okay.
I need to pull L, please.
No. Let's see. Did you want to pull any? No? Okay, and then I wanted to pull N. So, let's see. Let's start with K.
Turn the microphone on. Earlier this year, we had a similar situation. Is this, from what I've been looking at, is this the same thing? It's a wash with expanded hours in skating, expanded usage, and the revenue from that covers the budget?
Correct. I mean, this was something that wasn't originally planned as part of the budget, so it is a supple budget request from this last fiscal year. So we did go over budget on part-time staff hours, but yes, that was due to the increase in participation with a lot of our programs. So in order to have the bodies to support those programs, it was necessary to provide staffing to be able to support the growth in our programs that we've seen over the last 2 years. And yes, our revenue is up. That wasn't something that was in the staff report, but we talked to Aaron Felmley today, and he stated that our revenue was about $180,000 for last fiscal year, and we budgeted $120,000, so we were well over the budgeted amount. So yes, I would say it was a wash. We're still in the black with this additional supplemental budget request for an expense.
Perfect, thank you.
Yep.
Yeah, and Councilmember Johnson, this was a request from the finance director myself in order to be able to, when you have a significant change from the budget that wasn't authorized by council, it could be an audit finding. So really, our finance director really just wanted to see this reconciled and have that council approval so it doesn't end up as a finding in our audit, so needed to address it.
Document.
It did go like 27,000 over.
Yeah.
And it's really difficult to go back in the last fiscal year and reconcile, the budget after the fact. So what can you tell us has been put in place to make sure this doesn't happen?
Yeah, good question. So obviously you'll see in the staff report, you'll see a chart. So we are going to be tracking our monthly hours so that we don't exceed that 10,000 hour limit. And we will be including that in our monthly report. So that first monthly report for July that you will see next month for this first fiscal year will have the first month. So we'll have year to date on the hours compared to the chart that's the table that's in there for our projected hours so that we can track those hours. Myself, Merritt included, will be tracking those hours a little more closely as well. And I will note that we try to do what we can as far as subsidizing some of our hours and finding volunteer help. We've got multiple programs where we do utilize volunteer help, so we're not paying staff hours. We also, exactly 7.5% of this year's current budget is subsidized by First 5 Humboldt. So we're doing what we can to try to find volunteers and find grant opportunities so that we don't exceed the budget expenses for part-time hours.
So specifically, then you will be responsible for looking at that, checking that on a weekly, if not daily.
Yes, that's correct. Yep, as the director, it is my responsibility.
And we'll be reporting that back monthly. One of the things that Cameron and Emily have put together is kind of a projection of when they need the hours. So they've looked at the programs, forecasted the hours, so they've established a budget, of what the hours will be, and then they'll come back and report what the actual hours were. And so one of the things I'm talking about to Cameron about, there's been a lot of effort over the last couple of years that, starting with the new recreation supervisor. A lot of the programs, there wasn't kind of an institutional memory, so there's a lot of things that have been worked on and have taken more administrative time, and there's been training for our part-time recreation coordinators, which there wasn't the same training to the same extent in the past. And so I think they're going to get better at what they're doing. Again, and one of the things Cameron and I discussed when this issue came up is, let's make sure, first of all, ask permission, not forgiveness. And then let's do a good job tracking it in the future. And so I'm confident with what we put in place that we'll be doing that this year.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. This isn't one of those things that to ask forgiveness isn't in the ballpark here. And, realistically, this council has provided just about every ask that has come before us. And so it is troubling when something like this happens and comes back at us. So I'm glad that it will be taken care of in the future.
Yeah. I mean, I will say, in general, on a positive note, that was money that was not wasted, right? That was money that went towards programs. I mean, I understand the budget's the budget. Stay within your limits. However, due to the demand, we had to provide the bodies to support the amount of activity. So we kind of felt like our hands were tied a little bit, but it went to a good cause. It went to providing higher quality recreation programs for your community. So
Understood. But still.
I would like to see on the months when there's not the recreation programs and there's not events going on for those months, if you could save hours for that, because the very last part of the budget year is summer fun. And sometimes there's not, you can't predict how many kids you're going to have for summer fun, and I don't want it to, we don't have the staff, so we can't take the kids. So if possible, on those months when there's nothing going on, to actually see if you can save some of those hours and not try to use every hour that you have.
Right.
For like put it in the bank for an emergency.
Right. Yeah, we try to only utilize hours as needed, but of course, like you mentioned, summer camp, we use, of the 10,000 hours that we've got allocated for this fiscal year, summer camp staff is about 5,500 of those hours. So we're very limited the rest of the 9 months of the year with what we're going to do with our programming. So unfortunately, it's going to be difficult for us to continue to expand because we just frankly don't have the staff to provide the growth of the programs. But we'll do what we can to, continue to provide the highest quality programs that we currently offer. So yeah, I appreciate the flexibility and I apologize. But again, I think it went to a great cause.
On a side note, I did a couple of times went over to the new basketball courts and looked at the pickleball courts, and they are excellent. Did a great job with the surface and painting. So,
Thank you. I'm sure Merritt will probably include that as part of the city manager's report, so we'll save some of the details for that. No?
Yeah, I have it in there, but
Okay.
feel free if it comes up. You'll be here, so.
Yeah. I know we do have a plan for a ribbon cutting soon at that location, so we'll coordinate that with city council on a date that works for everybody. So.
and let me know ahead of time, and I can get a lot of pickleball players there.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, while we're on that note, I guess I would like to thank Public Works, namely Brendan and Matt, who's here today, for helping with that project. They, took the reins mostly on that project, and of course solicited feedback from myself and Merritt, but they did most of the grunt work, so I wanted to recognize them for their efforts on that. It's a beautiful dual court. The pickleball lines were something that we, kind of decided on last minute. However, anytime there's a recreation space, if we can get multi-use out of it, that's what we try to do. So.
Absolutely.
Okay, and L?
I don't have discussion on L, but we would have to, I will have to recuse myself when we get to approving that item.
Okay. And then N. N. Am I the only one that pulled N? Okay. I just want to say on this N that I talked to Merritt a lot about this because, especially through our events, I saw how much work those park workers were doing and how they really needed the help. So I'm really glad to be able to approve this to get them a little bit more help out there. They do an excellent job and try to keep up as much as they could. So it's going to be nice to maybe give them a little bit more help. So I'm happy to see this one too.
I appreciate that, Madam Mayor. I did want to backtrack and also thank you again for the July's Parks Month proclamation. But yes, our crew works extremely hard. And, I think that, I know that we were able to pull off a really successful rodeo and auto expo. Unfortunately, due to being a little short-staffed, we had to put some of the general maintenance stuff on the back burner. But, we were able to pull those two events off more successfully than since I've been here. So I was really impressed. So they really work hard. But yes, it's been a little difficult since the facility custodian came over to the parks, and that position's been down, as well as the parks do. We've just been struggling to try to stay afloat and keep ahead of the game. So this will certainly allow us to do that. So it's much appreciated. Thank you.
If I could just add to that too, it seems like Parks has been a great training ground for our other departments. We've seen some of our Parks folks go over the streets, and that crew really hustles, and they have a great work ethic there. And so, having these additional hires, we're hopeful that they'll be around until we can replace those other permanent positions, the Part 2, and get the Parks 2 and the janitor back. But I mean, with the way it's been going, it's been a training ground for some of our other departments. But it's a good thing. They're all city employees, and they could, that crew really hustles, and they get frustrated with being behind on things. So I know that they're going to really appreciate having that help and be able to keep things to the standard that they themselves want to uphold. So thank you.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve all of them except I?
Except L.
I mean L. Looks like an I.
Make a motion to approve consent calendar A through N while dropping I.
L.
L.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, now we need another one to approve L.
I make a motion to approve L of the consent calendar.
Second.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I'll recuse myself.
Okay. And then moving on to city council business. Public hearing, introduction of the first reading of ordinance 2023-760, adding chapter 12.26 to title 11 of the Fortuna Municipal Code to provide rules and regulations for bike and skate location, parks location in Newburgh Park. Staff report, please.
So Cameron Moll, our Parks Director, is going to be providing the staff report.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening again, Mayor and City Council. So if you recall, I know we didn't have any meetings in July, but in June, we brought forth the new vert ramp or skate park construction project over at Newburgh Park. So I wanted to wait to bring this until that was approved so that we could roll a bike park and skate park ordinance into one. So basically, this serves a couple purposes, and this was recommended by our risk pool agency, the California Intergovernmental Risk Authority, aka CIRA, in an effort to, twofold, protect the best interest of the city and by advising proper safety precautions while using the skate or bike park, which obviously has a little bit of inherent risk, but also protect the city's best interests as far as litigation or liability goes. So we already currently have, basically what will come with this is being able to post the rules and regulations when the new skate park is built. The bike park currently has the rules posted. And so when the skate park is built, we will also erect a sign there. And you'll see in my fiscal impact, I'm estimating about $1,000 for signage for that. And then, kind of going into a few of the details of the ordinance, and the city attorney as well as CIRA representatives assisted me with putting this together. Really the gist of it is the posting of the signs and making sure that people are wearing their helmet, elbow pads, knee pads, and any persons who is not following those rules is subject to a citation, but also other rules as well. No possession of drugs or alcohol or being under the influence, no fighting or violence, no possession of firearms or any kind of weapons, no smoking, no amplified music, and no excessive profanity to try to protect all those other users that are also sharing that space. I'm sure Casey would agree with me that we're not going to have police officers out there citing people for swearing or not wearing their helmet. I think, education is the most important piece to start, and by reminding people what those rules are, posting those signs. But certainly sometimes we do get some people who consistently don't like to follow rules or cause trouble, and that's when we would ask PD to come in. So, again, this is an ordinance to help protect our citizens and our city from injury. I'm happy to answer any questions. Merritt, I don't know if you wanted to add anything.
Yeah, I'll just add that Cameron worked with representatives from our risk pool, the CIRA, and this was their recommendation, so they helped provide the template. Arcata, Eureka, other agencies with skate parks also have done a similar thing to protect themselves from that risk, and so we're kind of following in suit, and what really initiated this is the potential development of that new skate ramp that the council approved recently for Newburgh Park. And I appreciate Cameron putting this together.
Any questions from?
Yeah, should we include the bike rodeo part too, just since we're doing it? I mean, it's not as wreckful, but it's biking.
Yeah, I at this time I wouldn't advise throwing the bike rodeo in there since it's just a one-day event. We've got plenty of staff there. We're making sure we're providing helmets, so there's a lot of oversight. Whereas at the bike and the skate parks, there's not someone there kind of overseeing what's going on, so there's a higher risk there, I would say. But that's not a bad idea.
Just a question on attachment 1 in A. It's the first paragraph. And the last sentence of that particular paragraph starts or ends up with other wheeled recreational device at the skateboard park must wear a helmet, elbow pads, and knee pads, and that any person failing to do so will be subject to citation. Would an option also be to or removal from the park? Or do we go right to a citation for that violation?
Casey can chime in here if he feels necessary, but I would say a citation would probably be the first step, just to, try to curb that activity and see if it stops. Obviously, if that's a problem person, that's something that we would do on a case-by-case basis. We have done that in the past with consistent troublemakers in the park, so it is something that we are able to do. But I would hate to go there right off the bat, and if we need to cite them, and hopefully that teaches somebody a lesson to make sure that they're behaving at their best while in that space.
did we take this as an example from other jurisdictions?
Yeah. I can't remember exactly where I got the original template from, but I ran it through our representatives at CIRA, and they all put their stamp of approval on it, so I know that they're totally good with what the verbiage is in this document.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Just to clarify too, and Chief may want to weigh on this is an administrative citation. So really, and I think that a fine can be waived on this too. So it's not like they're going to be cited for a misdemeanor if they do that, but it's an administrative citation under the city's municipal code.
Yeah, that's a good point. And, to the city manager's point, and also what Cameron was talking about, it's very difficult for us as a local government to, essentially tell a citizen that they can't come to a city park. So the authority is very gray in that area, and the administrative citations help us set precedents and a track record of misbehaviors and or violations to assist us down the road and actually being able to, tell them through court proceedings or whatever, hey, you can no longer visit the park. So that would be my 2 cents.
Any other questions from council? Okay, we'll open public comment. Anybody in the public have any comments on this item? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. We have a motion?
I'll move to hold the first reading of ordinance 2023-760, read by title only, and continue the public hearing to Monday, August 21st, 2023, for the second reading and adoption, and possible adoption.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Ordinance 2023-760, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Fortuna, adding Chapter 12.26 to Title 11 of the Fortuna Municipal Code to provide rules and regulations pertaining to the bike and skate parks located at Newburgh Park. Councilmember Conley?
Aye.
Councilmember Losi?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson?
Yes.
Mayor Trent?
Yes. Motion passes. Moving to our next item. Approve an addition or an addendum to the initial study mitigated negative declaration of environmental impact for the wastewater treatment and, how do you say that word? Effluent percolation system upgrade project, Resolution 2023-20. Staff report, please.
Yes, good evening, Honorable Mayor and City Council. It's my pleasure to be here this evening for this staff item. And before I jump in, I do also want to note that we do have a representative with our environmental consultant, GHD, here this evening, Andrea Hilton. She's here to support and answer any questions that council may have on kind of the process and procedure of the CEQA aspect and why we are doing this addendum for this project. But before we jump into that, I kind of want to just go on a large-scale overview of kind of what brought us here and what some of the driving factors are. I do intend to be rather kind of brief and high level, but by all means, if you do have questions, please let me know. So, as many members of the council are aware, since 2017, the city has been under both a time schedule order and a compliance schedule to complete a number of improvements at the city's wastewater treatment facility. Those 2 big improvements include a change to the city's treatment facilities to where we would remove nitrogen from the effluent. Currently, we do not have a treatment process that removes nitrogen species. And the second being to move the city's summertime discharge, treated effluent discharge point from the percolation ponds, which are located in between the river and the city's treatment facility, to a point that is further away from the river and has a more distant connection hydraulically with the river. So we moved forward with preliminary design for that project, and in 2020 we completed preliminary design and also developed and approved the initial study mitigated negative declaration, which is the CEQA document that covers the project under the California Environmental Quality Act, or CEQA. So over the next several years after we completed that level of work, the city did go out to competitive proposal to procure a consultant to take on the preliminary design and take it into final design. We completed that in late 2020, and moving through early 2021, we started to get some steam in developing the engineering plans and specifications and estimates and all the things to develop construction documents for the project. As we got into the year 2021, working through that, it was brought to the city's attention in moving through that ultimately the new ponds, or I shouldn't say ponds, the new treated effluent disposal site on the west side of the river that was proposed, which is about a mile west of the ponds now. It was proposed to be located in the uplands, kind of in and around where the old motorcycle track is over there on the Ferndale side of the river. In summary, it was found that that site does not operate or function appreciably much better than the current percolation ponds are on our side of the river. So I guess long story short, the city and staff felt like that ultimately the project was not kind of a shoe-in to be a sensible way to address the regulatory drivers that we are under to move our percolation, to move our seasonal discharge point for our effluent. And we really wanted to take a step back and make sure that we were pursuing a project that would stand the test of time and that would be robust and that would have a design life longer than 5 or 10 years, which is ultimately what we were anticipating with our findings across the river, unfortunately. Since the determination that the new subsurface percolation field was likely an infeasible alternative, we've been working with the regional board and specifically with the basin planning unit within the regional board who regulates discharges to the Eel River Basin to identify what a suitable path forward is for the city, recognizing that we do have some compliance issues and areas of need in regards to the summertime discharge prohibition, wherein nobody in the Eel River Basin actually can discharge any kind of effluent, treated or not, to surface waters in between May 15th and September 30th. So after some engagement on all these new constraints that we were finding within the Eel River groundwater basin, we have come to an initial conclusion between city staff, our design team, and staff at the regional board, including the basin planning unit, that going back to pursuing a triennial review application, which could result in an amendment to the basin plan, which could allow the city to continue to operate the percolation ponds as we do now, was likely our best alternative, and it's something that the regional board staff is showing support for and understanding what some of the constraints and issues we are facing down here with needing to get rid of our treated effluent. Moving forward with that, we are positioning ourselves to apply for the triennial review process. I believe it's in the next few months where it goes to the regional board to be voted on. That would have the inclusion of the city's project as part of the triennial review plan of 2023 through the regional board. And we do have good staff support there, so we are hopeful and somewhat expecting to be put on that list and to be put on a path where we could explore keeping the facilities we do have now. So in order to continue to operate the percolation ponds, it's likely that some additional modifications to what we do at the plant would be required in order for that to be deemed an acceptable project and an acceptable effluent discharge point during the discharge prohibition, which I mentioned is May 15th to September 30th. Right now, we don't really have a full understanding of what some of those additions may be, if anything at all, honestly. Some of that will become more apparent during the triennial review process, wherein we have to do a number of engineering studies to determine the impacts that our current ponds have, if any, and how we would mitigate those with additional treatment if required. So some of the treatment processes that we've been talking about, and I know we've talked about a little bit several years ago when we were talking about long-term planning for the treatment facility, would be the possible inclusion of phosphorus removal system, UV disinfection with post-secondary filtration, as well as a number of other minor items that could be included as part of the project. However, one area that we found is we had to kind of take a step back as we were assessing and reviewing the CEQA document that was developed for the project in 2020, which was very specific to the project that we were moving forward with at that time. And a lot of these additional improvements that may or may not be necessary moving forward were not described in that document. So we did not have coverage under CEQA, and with that we also would not have the ability to apply for state grant funding for any components related to that. It would have to be included in the project's environmental document. So at this point, given that we are still taking a step back and assessing what some of our alternatives are and what some of the improvements may be going forward and ultimately to get in compliance with our wastewater discharge, and to provide the highest level of flexibility for us as, the city and the design team moving forward and to have coverage under CEQA. Staff have worked collaboratively with Andrea Hilton here with GHD, who is our environmental consultant, to develop the addendum to the 2020 ISM&D that you have seen included as an attachment to the staff report. So an addendum to the ISM&D was deemed appropriate under CEQA, specifically section 15162, as this was a ultimately it's a minor alteration to the document itself. It's the inclusion of a few extra processes in our developed treatment plant site. No new mitigations, no new impacts are proposed because it's all within the footprint of our existing facility where, we'd be performing operations anyway. There is a bulleted list. I won't go through piece by piece of the additional items that we added for coverage in the document, but again, a few of them are just anticipated ones that may or may not be required to pursue the triennial review process, and others are just items that we would want to throw in for coverage under CEQA anyway, as part of regular projects that we would be undertaking over the years. Let's see. So, as I had mentioned, part of this is so that we are kind of being a little bit proactive and that we have coverage under CEQA largely for where the project may or may not go as we develop our final design and ultimately move for construction of a preferred alternative. The other big piece is funding. So in 2021, we did apply to the state water, the Clean Water SRF, which is part of the state revolving fund. It's the state fund that funds wastewater projects of this type. So when we applied, the funding plan at that time was that there would likely be about $5.5 million available as grant funding for the city. We had some money set aside in our wastewater capital reserves, which would fund a portion of it, and then the balance of the project cost would be funded under low-interest loans, and we would need to perform a wastewater rate adjustment to cover the debt service on the project loans that we would incur. During the same timeline that a lot of these other things have happened over the last couple of years, largely as a function of kind of the COVID years and a lot of the infrastructure money that went in and around, the new intended use plan for the Clean Water SRF removed the grant funding cap limits. And so it is possible, as a disadvantaged community like Fortuna is in this sense, that we could get all or at least a very, very significant portion of the project covered with grant funds, and hopefully we would not actually have to take out any loans or do anything to complete the improvements. We are working regularly and diligently with staff at the state board who is administering the fund, and we've had some very positive discussions. I'm pretty sure the city of Arcata recently, with their big compliance project they're doing, has been able to get in on this opportunity as well. So we're hopeful that, albeit it's not a great thing to have to take a step back all the time, that's not anything that normally we ever want to do. It could also have, allowed us to align ourselves with a funding and financial opportunity that ultimately will be better in the long term for the city. So, in summary, we have developed the addendum to the CEQA document, as you've seen, with the minor alterations, given the additional treatment processes, again, that we may or may not pursue as part of a project moving forward. And it is my recommendation that the council adopt Resolution 2023-20, which would amend the project ISM&D and provide approval of the project path going forward, or I suppose the possibility of the project path going forward. So as far as an environmental review, as I mentioned, we did do a review based on all of the regular CEQA sections of the additional proposed items that could be part of the project. We did find that there are no new anticipated impacts and therefore no new anticipated mitigation measures. And again, that's one of the large reasons why through CEQA section 15164, the addendum was deemed appropriate. And then lastly, as far as public review, addendums aren't subject to being circulated like ISM&Ds are, so these findings have not been circulated. It just comes to the approval of the governing body for an addendum such as this. I think in any event, improvements to the plant, which ultimately make our effluent better and the environment better, is all pretty positive stuff if we are allowed to move in that direction. So with that, there are a lot of moving parts to this between the funding and the basin plan and the time schedule order and the compliance schedule. And, there's a lot of irons in the fire and there's a lot of things moving relatively concurrently right now. I'm very hopeful that by the end of the year, some of these larger pieces will begin to become more clear, including being on the triennial review list, including having some resolution on what our funding will be, and including having an idea on what our project path is. And of course, as we start to get more direction and concrete details on that, we'll absolutely be sharing those and bringing back that as items to the council as we have more solid things to report with that. So with that, I'll end my staff report. Again, happy to answer any questions pertaining to the project. And if you have any questions on the CEQA process or the appropriateness of the path we've chosen to amend the document, by all means, we have Andrea Hilton here, who is more than qualified to speak to those items. So thank you.
Thank you. Any questions from council?
Just a couple of things. So it looks like we can change our disinfection methods to safer, actually, methods, remove some disinfection byproducts, improve operation and control, update the SCADA system, which is always good, and possibly add solar. And if they've removed the cap on the grant opportunities, we could fund a major portion of this anyways, hopefully. So I think it's a great thing, a lot better off than the other methods that we were looking at to deal with our effluent. So looks like possibly a win-win.
And I would like to note, just to expand on that a little bit, part of how we're trying to position ourselves with the amendment to the CEQA document is recognizing that as much funding is reasonably available, we could grow the definition of the project to cover things that are potentially outside of the exact compliance issues, solar being one of them. So, we could potentially take advantage of the opportunity when funding is available to make some really great long-term improvements that otherwise wouldn't be included. And including that in our CEQA document is a big step forward with that. So,
thank you.
Yeah, I've got a couple questions and just a comment. It's concerning that, and I talked to Merritt about this, that, we've been working on this since early 2020. It looked like a good project. At this point, fortunately, negotiations didn't happen, or they happened, but the purchase of any property over on the west side of the river didn't happen. But my concern is that working with the city's engineering consultants, we go into late 21 and find out that the proposed treatment or treated effluent across the river is likely to result in the same impacts as our own percolation ponds here. I'm wondering, why did it take that length of time to determine it's just not going to work? And it's a moot point, I understand that, but I'd like to.
Oh, absolutely, and it's a more than fair question. So I guess to speak directly to it, there's stages you move through with a project. You do preliminary and you do draft versions of certain analyses. In this particular case, we did an early draft analysis to test the feasibility of an alternative. It was one of those areas that I think that due to the simplicity of the type of analysis that was done, and I don't say simplicity in a negative way of it. It's a very normal and standard of care way to approach a project like this. It didn't capture a lot of the other nuance that is out in that basin, and then there was, in a small sense, a small error in the analysis itself that overestimated, the dilution, you would say, of a certain part of it. So those two things came together, and I think the other thing that was a really big contributing factor to it, over the last several years, I believe just late last year is when the county completed their Sustainable Groundwater Management Plan Act for the Eel River Basin, which was required through SGMA. And there was years and years of monitoring and data logging and groundwater study that was done in the basin that really provided a level of understanding and information that was not available until a year or two ago. With information to that scale, some of the challenges and issues that before would have cost millions and millions of dollars. That's what that plan and that analysis and that model cost, came more to the forefront, really. So I think there was a couple issues on our end, and then there was, this other project that was going that provided a much greater level of information and detail, which made things more apparent, really.
Councilmember Losi, I just want to add that I actually think we're in a better spot. We really didn't have a strong desire to move operations all the way across the Eel River and over to the other side. Really, it was an option that we pursued to try to keep our costs down for treatment. And really what's changing now is there's more money available for treatment. So, with the additional funding that's going to be available through the Clean Water SRF for treatment, I think it's a great move that we're taking now to enhance that treatment to a higher level, because the regional board is always going to continuously review what effluent quality is coming out of these treatment plants. And my opinion is they're not going to stop until we treat it to a very high level, something equivalent to tertiary, get rid of those disinfection byproducts. And we avoided that because it wasn't affordable by the city. So we wanted to keep a enhanced secondary and go to groundwater. And what we're seeing is that groundwater, it's more, I think over time, if we can improve the treatment processes, enhance them consistent with the change in the environmental document, we're going to be in a much better place, because we're going to be removing those nutrients. We're going to have a more robust treatment process, and we're going to be less susceptible to changes in the future. We can always look for another discharge location, but having that funding potentially available to upgrade our treatment plant was something that was new. That money wasn't available, and we were going to rely on reserves, borrowing, or issuing bonds. And so at this point, if we can enhance that treatment plant to a much higher quality, I think we're going to be in a better position. So even though it seems like an opportunity lost to go across the river, no one's really been excited about having our staff drive 20 minutes or more to get to a discharge location to monitor it. So I think we're going to be at a better spot with what Brendan's laid out and trying to discharge where we are. We've always wanted to do that, but we've been pushed to study these other alternatives by the regional board. And it's kind of like, well, we want to see what you can do until you prove you can't. And so the Eel River groundwater basin is like a big bathtub. You put things there, eventually it's going to show up somewhere else, or there's going to be a new, effluent, there's going to be a new limitation on what you put into groundwater. So, it's my feeling that this is a much more robust process. There's going to be funding available to do it, and it's the right move for the city right now. And we'll schedule another wastewater update, as Brendan mentioned, and bring more details, figures, and we'll show the council. But right now, this is a relatively minor change in the environmental document, just to include those new enhancements at the treatment plant. So
Yeah, no,
it's
I
a good
agree.
move.
I mean, much preferred, as opposed to putting a pipe under the river a mile off, and this makes so much more sense. My concern being with this addendum, and you mentioned that none of these modifications are going to rise to the level of a new CEQA report or a determination. But how do we deal with the volume of the effluents within the footprint that we have with these modifications? Any one or combination?
So fortunately, changing things inside the treatment plant doesn't ultimately change how much the city receives. So right now, the facilities we operate are of adequate and suitable size to do what we need to do to discharge during the prohibition period. That would maintain going forward. And actually, if we had higher quality effluent, it would actually, in kind of a reverse way, increase the capacity of what we have now, because we would have better quality going into the ponds, and it would make them function longer. So the inclusion and the improvements at the plant would not create a condition where we would have less ability to discharge to our existing location going forward.
Okay, so for instance, with the UV disinfection, we still have the same volume, like you say, but now that is treated by UV program or project within the footprint of the existing plant. But then what happens with that effluent once it's treated?
I guess maybe I don't fully understand. So, doing something like UV, let's just play this one through. I think it'd be a good example. Switching over from our gaseous chlorine system to a UV system eliminates a number of environmental and safety hazards that are associated with chlorine it's a compressed gas that's dangerous. You could overdose it and have chlorine go out in the environment. You could have disinfection byproducts and other things. Moving to a system such as UV would remove a lot of the risks away from the effluent we do. And I mean, we manage those right now, and we do a great job of remaining in compliance with our chlorine system, don't get me wrong. But that would be one of those steps towards recognizing that our risk of having something environmentally insensitive happen would go down even further. And those are the types of things that the regional board would concur with in saying, you've switched this one process for another process that achieves an equivalent end goal, which is to remove bacteria from effluent. You're doing so in a way that significantly minimizes risks for a number of other issues that may or may not happen if something were to go, catastrophically wrong or to have some sort of a hiccup in our treatment process.
So we're replacing the chlorine process with UP.
Correct.
Or UV or any of these other modifications.
And like I said, it could be that, it could be other things. The one thing we do know is we are installing, we will need to install a system to remove nitrogen species, which if you think about it as, my daughter makes these little car tracks all the time. She loves it. It's great fun. And you just connect all these little pieces and the car runs through the whole thing, and at the end it ends up at the beginning. We would just be adding more tracks in the interim that same water, that same volume would be moving through while it goes through those various other processes. They're all just picking something else out of the effluent and making it that much better.
The only other question I have is $20 to $40 million is an awful large gap, a big spread. Would it be better to identify the modifications that we would probably be looking at and better hone in on the approximate cost? Would it be more of a better chance to get grant money if we knew that amount of cost?
I think right now we're taking the approach, and it's pretty normal in working with the Clean Water SRF actually, to start engaging them as you move through somewhat the definition of your project. Unfortunately, just given where we have to move through the triennial review process right now, there is only so much project definition that we can successfully do at this point, and of course project definition is directly proportional to cost. I think what we are seeking right now and working with the funding agency is to identify a project that they want to stand behind in helping the city fund. And with that, we can understand what the findings are of our triennial review process and what we need to do to meet our compliance targets, and then what we can maybe include beyond that to just make the project even better within the funding limits given. So it's a little bit of a parallel process that we're trying to navigate right now. But
Well, and I know that we have to approve the CEQA issue before we can move forward with the grant.
Correct. And then again, just to reiterate that doing the amendment to the ISM&D does not commit us to any one of these things. It just provides the opportunity for us to do that if we find it necessary and available.
I'm glad that there's state money out there available, federal money out there available.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Brendan.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other questions from council? Okay, at this time I'll open public comment. Any questions from the public? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Do we have a motion?
I make a motion to adopt Resolution 2023-20 and read by title only.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Resolution 2023-20, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Fortuna approving a CEQA addendum to the Mitigated Negative Declaration of Environmental Impact for the Wastewater MPDES Compliance Project. Councilmember Conley?
Aye.
Councilmember Losi?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson?
Yes.
Mayor Trent?
Yes. Thank you. Our next item is authorize the city manager to submit a grant to the Wildlife Conservation Board for the design and permitting of replacement culverts along the Mill Creek, and to designate the city manager to authorize representative, or as the authorized representative. Resolution 2023-21. Staff report, please.
Yes, this one will be by me again. So as many of us will remember, some more fondly than others, in 2020, the city was able to deliver the Jameson Creek Fish Passage Improvement Project. So that was for the failing culvert we had along Jameson Creek at the crossing at Ronerville Road specifically. We had an undersized culvert that had reached the end of its useful life. It was a total fish barrier on a salmonid-bearing stream. We had a near failure of the road due to some failure in the pipe. I believe it was in 2016, 2017. So the city at the time, the Public Works Director, City Engineer, Mayor Perry, was able to navigate us through those times by identifying the issue and identifying funding sources that the city could use ultimately to move towards funding full replacements of the crossing at Jameson Creek and Ronerville Road there. Finding outside funding for projects like these is very important. The city has very limited funding capabilities for drainage type projects, including these. The Jameson Fish Passage project, fully out the door, let's call it, was probably about a $3 million effort, which is somewhere on the order of 15 years worth of our Measure E allocations to drainage in order to do one project. So it's really important and it's really critical, not only because we want to do it for our community and to make sure that we have good, lively resources and that we can help bring, natural life back into our city where development has happened through the years that didn't necessarily think of those things at the time. But to position ourselves so that we can take advantage of various funding opportunities that the state or the federal government releases in order to do these projects, whether it's to do the planning portion or the design portion, planning and design portion, or the construction implementation portion. So with that kind of teeing up kind of the bigger picture, in the years since we completed Jameson Creek, we've really been keeping a close eye on funding opportunities that would allow us to continue that model and see some additional crossings that we have near or long-term issues with, and so we can develop a plan and construction plans ultimately to move towards implementing those projects as well. One of the main ones we focused on for several years was the Mill Creek crossing at Weber Street. It's an area very much like the Jameson Creek crossing, albeit on a much quieter road. It's a very deep culvert. It's significantly undersized. It is a fish passage barrier, and it's a project that is reasonably approaching the end of its useful life and will need to be replaced sometime in the relatively near future. So we've applied for probably 3 or 4 other grant opportunities to try and get design funding for that particular crossing. Unfortunately, we have not been successful until late last year when we heard about an opportunity through the Wildlife Conservation Board, who is actually the funding agency through the state that funded a decent portion of the construction implementation of Jameson Creek. So we learned of the opportunity. We heard that there was some funding capacity in their program, and our project ultimately was a good fit for them to move forward with doing the design and the permitting of that project. We had some early discussions with them, and much to our surprise, their staff loved the project, but they are looking to fund larger projects and to get more of their money obligated with the staff that they have. So in working collaboratively with them, we sat down and thought, well, there's 3 more barriers to fish passage in between Weber Street and then the last barrier. Those additional ones are Ronerville Road, at Mill Street, and at Mountain View, right at the edge of the city limits. And so we proposed moving forward with engineering, design, and permitting packages for all 4 culverts, recognizing that at some point, through the coming years, all of them are going to need to be replaced. All of them are needed to be upgraded and retrofitted. And if we were able to develop a plan in order to do those one by one, we would be shovel ready, so to speak, to jump in and act towards any opportunities for grant funding that we could for construction implementation. So we put together a package. I had help from Matt Nyberg with our Public Works engineering staff. He jumped right in actually from the word go and starting. I think maybe that was about 5 minutes after his employee introduction. He was over there completing the application, which was very helpful, and I'm very appreciative of that. But we submitted the application, and right now we are actually on the board agenda at the August 24th Wildlife Conservation Board meeting to be heard on the consent calendar for funding for this project, specifically for 100% plans, specification, and estimate for construction for each one of these. I'll note this is a planning grant. We're only going to get engineering designs out of it, but we will be positioned at that point to have a package from which we can request implementation funding. And there is still projected to be a number of years where, some of this large funding amounts, whether they're through the state or federal government, are available that we can act upon. So the purpose of the resolution being brought to you here tonight is one of the last requirements before going to the board on the 24th is the council of the city of Fortuna pass a resolution showing their support for the project and their concurrence with staff applying for grant funds for the project, and also designating an authorized representative who can enter into a funding agreement on behalf of the city. So you'll see a resolution, I believe, maybe it missed going out in the packet, but I believe they were handed out to you before the council meeting by Sienna, and I can answer any questions on that you have. But ultimately, with that, we could go to the board on the 24th, and assuming it passes the consent calendar, the city will be due to receive a grant with realistically no match required in the amount of, I believe it's $967,000 in order to complete engineering designs for all the crossings. I said basically no match because we do have a $10,000 staff time commitment, so it's an in-kind match of staff time. Over the lifetime of the project, we would commit that many hours in reviewing and being part of the design development team and anything. So we'd be doing largely the same things that we already would, regardless of committing it as match. So with that, I would recommend that the council pass the resolution, and this is a great opportunity. It looks like we're well positioned to get about $1 million in grant funding to move these projects forward. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions, and thanks for your time.
Thank you. Any questions from council? Seeing none, we'll open public comment. Anybody from the public have any comments on this item? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Do we have a motion?
I make a motion to adopt Resolution 2023-21 and read by title only.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Roll call, please.
Resolution 2023-21, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Fortuna approving the application for grant funds from the Wildlife Conservation Board for the Mill Creek Habitat Connectivity Project and designating the city manager as the authorized representative. Councilmember Conley?
Aye.
Councilmember Losi?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson?
Yes.
Mayor Trent?
Yes.
And just a word to Matt and Brendan, good job on this. It's badly needed, and whenever we can find grant money, you're right on target there. So thank you, guys.
Okay, our next item is public hearing, introduction and first reading of ordinance 2023-762, amending Title 15, Building and Construction of the Fortuna Municipal Code by adding Chapter 15.48, Construction and Demolition Debris Diversion, CD3.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and honorable council members. Let's see, I'm, as you mentioned, here to introduce the ordinance for construction and demolition debris diversion, which I'm going to call a CD3 because it's a mouthful to say each time. This ordinance will amend section 15.48 of the Building and Construction Municipal Code, adopting standards that meet CalGreen chapter sections 408 and 40, chapters 5, sections 408. It mandates that the city reports each year on construction and demolition waste diversion, and it'll help us with that, collecting the information to do the reporting. It's actually something that we began doing, February of this year. We've been having people do this. The one thing that will be different about this becoming an ordinance is that certain projects, ones that are over 1,000 square feet or have an implementation cost of $200,000 or more, they'll have to put a deposit down and there will be an administration fee. Our ordinance was modeled after other ordinances and written by them. So the way it's written is that it would be 1% of the cost or $500. In conversations with staff, we all kind of feel that that might be a little bit too much, and this is one of two places we're seeking council's input on perhaps lowering that to 0.5% or even 0.25%. Let's see, there will be some exemptions. They're laid out in the ordinance, and people can apply to be exempt because it's infeasible for them to comply. And so they'll have the ability to appeal a denial for that. So what we're doing, next slide. Okay, there you go, perfect. This is currently what people that come in for a permit are asked to fill out. And what they do is they estimate the quantities of these recyclable products or reusable. The method that they plan on doing, whether it is recycling, reusing, or whether it'll go to disposal, and the facility where they plan on taking it. Next slide, please. At the end of the project, they will be asked to produce a final report that gives the actual weights or actual volumes, the method, how it was either reused or recycled or disposed of, and the facility at which that took place. These are available at the front counter and online, along with some other resources. We have, next slide. We made a list of places around the county that take each of the different types of material that we look to have recycled. And then we also have, sometimes it's, next slide please, sometimes some things it's easier to do a volumetric conversion to weight, and so we also provide a conversion table for them to use. So the diversion is 65% of the material that's from demolition and construction. So it's a pretty substantial improvement on what will be entering our landfills. So the fiscal impact, we don't see that there will be any immediate fiscal impact. There will be 3 fees that will be added. An administrative fee for the qualifying projects, and then appeal fees for people that want to appeal either the decision at the end to not get a portion of their deposit back, or if they are asking for an exemption for it. Which brings me to the next place that we were seeking council's advice. We got comparative numbers from other things, other items in the budget for appeals, and the numbers we came up with were for the administrative fee, $175. Staff level appeal, that would be to the city manager, that would be $250. And then appeals to the city council level, which would be $500. So we are seeking input on these fees from the council and the percentage of the deposit that a large project would have to put down. At the second reading, staff intend to bring forth the final recommendation for fees and amend the adopted 2023-24 fee schedule to bring them into the budget. So with that said, recommendation is that the city have a motion to hold the first reading of ordinance 2023-760, an ordinance of the City Council of Fortuna, the City of Fortuna, adding chapter 15.48 to Title 15 of the Fortuna Municipal Code, Construction, Demolition, Debris, Diversion Ordinance CD3, read by title only, continue to public hearing Monday, November no, it should be the 21st for the second reading and roll call vote.
And I can just point out a couple things. First of all, I'd like to thank Matt. You know, we have a number of solid waste things that are coming up, and so Matt has been helping me with those. Also, compliance with SB 1383. But this is one of the required tasks for compliance with SB 1383. It's part of our compliance action plan, and so that's why we're pushing to get this done now. We've already been implementing it as a staff level, but again, this is a state requirement that cities do this, so we don't really have a choice. And I just want to highlight the one area that Matt pointed out. It's if you look on page 6 of 11 in the draft ordinance, 15.48.025. Again, it says each applicant of a covered project involving structures of at least 1,000 square feet or an estimated construction cost of at least 200,000 shall submit as part of the waste management plan a diversion security deposit in cash by irrevocable letter of credit in the amount of 1% of the total project cost or 500, whichever is greater. I think the one change that the council should probably make, if they did 1% and the smallest project was 200,000, that'd be 2,000. I think most of our builders in town would say they don't want to put another $2,000 in at the front end of a project. So our suggestion would be to reduce that to 0.25%. So if specifically you wanted to provide that direction, then the minimum deposit for one of those projects it'd be $500 if somebody came in with a $200,000 project instead of 1%, which would be $2,000. So we're suggesting that the council make that change, and we think $500 is enough so people aren't going to walk away from it. They'll actually do the report. And contractors and builders are already doing this in the other cities. They're doing it here. The extra steps that Matt put together the forms, so they have an easy reference City of Fortuna form. They have easy conversion factors to see what the density of plywood is or concrete or whatever if they don't have an exact scale measurement. We've done everything we can to make this easier than the templates that have been provided by Cal Recycle or that we've looked at for other cities. And I think the last piece is just settling on what that security deposit, the deposit is for your waste management plan being turned in at the end. And we think 0.25% is reasonable and enough to make sure that people do it.
Thank you. Any questions from council? No? Okay. I'll open public comment. Anybody from the public have any comments on this item? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Do you have a motion?
I'll go ahead and move to hold the first reading of ordinance 2023-762 and read by title only, including the change in Exhibit 1 as a part of the resolution. Section 15.48.025 diversion security deposit required, and to include 0.25% of the for the deposit of the total cost of the project, or $500. That'll stay the same. And continue the public hearing to Monday, August 21st, 2023, for the second reading and possible adoption.
Second.
Okay, roll call vote, please.
Ordinance 2023-762, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Fortuna, adding Chapter 15.48 to Title 15 of the Fortuna Municipal Code, Construction and Demolition Debris Diversion Ordinance, CD3. Councilmember Conley?
Aye.
Councilmember Losi?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson?
Yes.
Mayor Trent?
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next item is public hearing, introduction of the first reading of ordinance 2023-763, amending Title 8, Chapter 8.26, abandoned shopping carts, and determining the ordinance to be exempt from CEQA. Staff report, please.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Honorable City Council. I'll be reading the ordinance for our
So I'm pleased to bring another ordinance that contributes positively to the city's overall quality of life. I do want to point out this was a joint work product between the city attorney, Ryan Plotz, and I. So the ordinance adds Chapter 8.26 to Title 8 of the Fortuna Muni Code. And essentially what we're trying to do is promote the image of the community and just prevent disorderly and problematic blight, environmental impacts, and things that abandoned shopping carts create for us here. So the abandoned shopping cart ordinance will, sorry, I messed that up. Give me just a second. Technical difficulty. Is it still sharing, Sienna? I don't know. It just is weird. I need to open that. This. There we go. All right, so we're back. So essentially, like I said, this ordinance is going to identify abandoned shopping carts as, you know, just an issue for our community. Abandoned shopping carts reduce the value of private property. It creates blight and deterioration in public areas. It interferes with pedestrian and vehicular traffic and is just generally injurious to the health, safety, and general welfare for the community. So with the passing of Ordinance 23-763, it will minimize environmental impacts and it will increase our ability to minimize an orderly community. The ordinance will bolster our ability as a city to enhance the community image, and it will enhance some of those safety issues concerning vehicle and pedestrian traffic. So the prohibitions for this ordinance really are consistent with the current laws stated in Section 22-435 of the Business and Professions Code, which does make it a misdemeanor for a person to remove a shopping cart from the premises of a business. We would just be adopting what is already current law into our local municipal code. Things wouldn't change with, you know, how the police respond to that issue. If people don't have permission from the businesses, it is a violation of law to remove the cart, and they can be cited or arrested. So the requirements, mostly for our current retailers within the city, is that essentially they would have a 72-hour grace period from which to pick up their shopping carts that are either abandoned in a location or picked up by city officials. So we'll kind of get into what the impound requirements are. We have a choice in just essentially telling the business where their business carts are or collecting them and having them respond within 72 hours to pick up their carts free of charge. Businesses must securely contain carts after hours. Most of the retailers throughout the city are already doing that. And 24-hour businesses, those that are open 24 hours that utilize shopping carts, have to have collection schedules. So currently, we don't have any businesses that are open 24 hours, so that wouldn't apply. If an abandoned cart is picked up by the city, the business has 24 hours to retrieve it, and that's something that's negotiable, so we have to notice them. If we pick up the shopping cart, we essentially give them notice, and it's expected within 24 hours that they would respond to a city facility to pick up that shopping cart. Under requirements too, finally, businesses are required to submit a mandatory abandoned shopping cart prevention and retrieval plan to the city. That's an annual report. Staff has already put together essentially a 2-page downloadable check the box form, so to make it easier for our retailers just to, you know, fill out that report annually online and submit it. So I did have a note too for For the current businesses that are using shopping carts, that prevention and retrieval plan would be required 60 days after the second reading and implementation of the ordinance, and then 30 days after opening it, or a new business opens. So I was talking earlier about the different impound strategies that the city has. We can impound shopping carts with notice or without. Again, if we impound with notice, they have 72 hours to respond after that 24-hour notice to pick up their shopping cart and property free of charge. An impound without notice can also occur, such as the POP team or police going out to do a cleanup. If we locate 20 or 30 shopping carts on private property, we can collect those and, per the ordinance, store them at a city facility, provide notice after the fact, and again, they have 72 hours to respond and pick those up. The ordinance does give the city the authority to essentially impound for any emergency services that are being impeded by a shopping cart or group of shopping carts. It gives us the authority to sell carts after 30 days and to destroy or dispose of any unusable carts. As far as fines, I've already talked about the misdemeanor section for persons or a person that removes shopping cart or property from the business premises. There are other fines associated. It adds a $100 fine per calendar month. The businesses are delinquent with submitting their prevention and retrieval plan submissions. Again, I think we've made this incredibly simple by actually coming up with a downloadable check the box type of form that the retailers can essentially go on the city website, download the form, check the boxes, and they're done. There is a $50 fine per cart for non-collection by businesses after being noticed by the city. And those caught, again, removing carts from businesses will be fined and or arrested pursuant to the Fortuna Municipal Code and the California Business and Professions Code. So over the past few months, part of this work project has been several in-person meetings between myself and some of the general managers here in Fortuna with the retailers. Most participated in the meetings, some did not due to corporate policy, or they just chose not to attend them. But those meetings were used to essentially dispel any misnomers and to kind of go over why an ordinance like this is best for the community. And there was overwhelming buy-in from most of the retailers. Everybody understands what we're trying to do here and why this is good for the city. So in conclusion, really what this ordinance does is, kind of where I started was it's meant to increase the quality of life and protect the environment, to promote the city's image and deter blight and encourage responsible consumer behavior. So staff recommendation is to receive the presentation and review any questions, open public comment, and consider making a motion to accept the first reading. And I can answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from council? Nope. Seeing none, we'll open public comment. Any questions from the public?
I don't know. Is the shopping cart thing a big problem?
Yes.
Through the council. Yeah, we've had over the last year an uptick and increase in shopping carts that are just essentially abandoned both on private and public property. And, within the last 6 months, we've done some major cleanups where in this slide right up here, you can see we're filling trailers full.
I guess we just don't notice them. Thanks.
One of the things that I'm starting to see more and more often are the hand-carried baskets for if you don't need a shopping cart. They're being abandoned all over the place now, right, too. So.
Yep.
Anybody else from the public? Okay, we'll close public comment. We have a motion.
I make a motion to hold the first reading of ordinance number 2023-763, read by title only, and continue to public hearing on Monday, August 21st, 2023 for the second reading and adoption, possible.
I'll second.
Roll call vote, please.
Ordinance 2023-763, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Fortuna, California, amending Title 8, Health and Safety of the Fortuna Municipal Code by Chapter 8.26, abandoned shopping carts, and determining the ordinance to be exempt from CEQA. Councilmember Conley?
Aye.
Councilmember Losi?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson?
Yes.
Mayor Trent?
Yes. Okay, our next item is.
Madam Mayor, can I say something real quick?
Yes.
Just to go off that wall, when I was in the fire department, we would go down to some of those calls and there'd be 25 plus shopping carts blocking our only entrance to get to the fire. So we would have to literally move shopping carts just to get there. So yes, they are, you don't see them in the normal spots, but where the homeless live in the encampments and where the fire department has to respond to all the time, they're a big issue. And they use them like a fence. So they'll put them up and just string 25 carts, and now you have to try to figure out how to get through it. So, yeah.
Thank you. I didn't know that either. Yeah. And the hand carts are because the shopping carts now have locked wheels, so you can't steal a grocery bag full, so you can steal the hand cart full. Okay, our next item is to accept the military equipment report required by Assembly Bill 481, Resolution 2023-22. Report, or staff report, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Chief Day again. So on June 20th of this year, I provided the council with our annual military report. I provided it well in advance so that the council could familiarize itself with this year's report, and so I can answer any questions that the council may have this year. So we all know the history behind AB 481, and as a result, it's my obligation on a yearly basis to report out on certain areas, which include the use of military equipment, citizen complaints or concerns, internal audits, annual cost, future intents to purchase, and the public engagement meeting that is supposed to be held annually. So the following actions have been completed for 2023. First, the 2023 military equipment inventory was completed in May of 2023. Department policy number 709.1 was updated to reflect the newest inventory. Changes included the addition of one non-weaponized UAV drone and the replenishing of patrol rifle ammunition and pepper ball ammunition. So on the UAV drone that was purchased with council authorization via Resolution 22-35, the patrol rifle and pepper ball ammunition was purchased as needed using the authorized budget lines for fiscal year procurement. No citizen complaints or concerns have been received since the original adoption of the city's military equipment policy, and during this year's internal audit, no violations of the policy occurred. The department does intend to purchase ammunition as needed and 2 additional patrol rifles in 2023, as defined in Department Policy 709.4, subsection C. These rifles are authorized equipment pursuant to Department Policy number 312 and defined as AR-style nomenclature 223-556 millimeter NATO rifles. The rifles will be purchased using the normal fiscal year budget line. After publicly posting the required community engagement meeting on June 1st of this year, the Chief of Police facilitated the meeting on July 7th, 2023, to offer an opportunity for community members to voice concerns or ask questions. No community members attended that meeting. Staff recommends the council accept and approve this year's annual military equipment policy required by AB 481 and adopt Resolution 23-22 and read by title only. That concludes my report. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any questions from council? Nope. Okay, I'll open public hearing. Any questions from the public? Seeing none, we'll close public hearing. Do we have a motion?
I make a motion to adopt Resolution 2023-22 and read by title only.
Second.
Roll call vote, please.
Resolution 2023-22, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Fortuna accepting the annual military equipment report by the police chief and making findings relating thereto. Councilmember Conley?
Aye.
Councilmember Lewis?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson?
Yes.
Yes.
Resolution 2023-22, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Fortuna accepting the annual military equipment report by the police chief and making findings related thereto. Councilmember Conley?
Aye.
Councilmember Losi?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson?
Yes.
Mayor Trent?
Yes. Thank you. It's nice to be able to practice first, right? Our next item is public hearing for the approval of a major subdivision of 2 parcels, 1-61 acres in size, consisting of 9 residential parcels ranging in size from 6,014 square feet to 14,646 square feet, and a 1.77 acre remaining lot. Resolution 2023-23. Staff report, please.
Thank you, Mayor Trent. First of all, I just want to reiterate, I did have a question from a council member of why is this subdivision coming to council? Normally they go to the planning commission. So the reason it's going to the city council is because it's a major subdivision. I think the last one we had is the Twin Creeks, which was a FITSE. So subdivisions over 5 parcels go to the city council and have to be approved by the city council. And so this previously went to the planning commission and they recommended approval. So I'm going to run through the project briefly. Most of the information's in your staff report. If you have any other questions, let me know. But as read in the title, the project is a major subdivision of a 1.4 acre parcel and an 8,000 square foot existing parcel. And so you can see outlined in the red is the entirety of the parcel, and you can see the black inline in the middle. That's an existing parcel that's becomes part of the subdivision. It's a three-phase subdivision that's located on Kenmar Road, and this is the second of the 3 phases. The first phase, phase 1, was approved in 2019 and was a minor subdivision of the 3.7 acre parcel into 1 developed single family and a remainder of 151,000 square feet. So you can see the project is located on the south side of Kenmar Road between Remy Court and Church Street. The zoning for the parcel is R16, which establishes a minimum size of 6,000 square feet. So all of the parcels proposed as a part of this subdivision are between 6,000 square feet and 14,600 square feet. You can see this diagram shows the phases. So the bottom left is the first phase where there was one single family, one residential parcel that was split out from the rest. The top left shows phase 2, which will include enlarging that existing parcel and then creating 8 other additional parcels for a total of 9 parcels. And then to the right, you can see the remainder. And then the concept you can see outlined in black on the right-hand side is what phase 3 of the project would be. Again, phase 2 is what's under consideration, so the upper left. Here's a copy of the improvement plans for the project. This road is not improved, so currently there's not sidewalks or drainage here. So the applicant will have to build along the frontage of the project. They'll have to pave half the road, build sidewalk, curb, gutter, install drainage improvements and other utilities. And this project has been reviewed by our Public Works Department, Fire Department, and all those departments have signed off on or indicated their approval of this tentative map. So here's what the parcel looks in the aerial. You can see again, Kenmar Road wraps around the parcel. Remy Court off to the lower right. Here's what the parcel looks like from the ground. Just a couple of things to note that a wetland determination report was prepared for the site for the project in 2019, which determined that the parcel did not contain any areas that meet the criteria for a jurisdictional wetland. Additionally, an archaeological report was prepared by Nick Angeloff that found that there were no significant archaeological resources present that would be affected by the project, but it does include a condition if there is an incidental discovery of how they would handle that. Here's just another view of the site looking back towards Kenwood. And here's looking along the frontage of the site. As you can see, there's the roadway improvements and the frontage improvements, sidewalk, curb gutter, drainage would all have to be installed along the frontage of this as it's not currently developed. And this is looking to the right or kind of the southerly side of that existing parcel that's in the middle, and this area to the right would really be the area that's the subject of phase 3 of the subdivision. So with that, that's all I have for my staff report. If you have any other additional questions, I'd be happy to answer those. The council must base its decision on this subdivision on legal findings pursuant to the Fortuna Municipal Code. The project-specific findings were described in attachment F to the resolution and demonstrate the project's conformance with city standards, subdivision map act statutes, public health and safety, and adopted by reference to the resolution for the tentative map. So no members of the public showed up to ask questions. I think there was one question about, has anybody come forward from the public? And, there was one question about a potential offset road for a future subdivision across the street. And so I addressed that question, but we had nobody that showed up opposed to the project when it came to the planning commission. So.
Okay. Any questions from council? No? Okay, I'll open public hearing. Any questions from the public? Seeing none, we'll close public hearing. Do we have a motion?
I'll go ahead and move to adopt Resolution 2023-23 and read by title only.
And second?
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. Okay, moving on to H, appointment of CalPERS retired annuitant to extra help bus driver position 1. Staff report, please, or one position.
Yes. Good evening, Mayor, again, and City Council. I'll be presenting the staff report. I hear that you're really stoked about another resolution. This will be your 5th resolution for the evening, so I promise this is the last one because it does require a resolution. So we are filling some positions. We have 2 part-time positions in transit, 1 full-time, 2 part-time, and we're looking to fill a part-time position. The best candidate that we selected is a retired annuitant and worked for CAL FIRE for many, many years. That's Orlando Payne. He was selected as the top candidate, and because he came from a CalPERS agency into another CalPERS agency, there are regulations as far as limitations on how many hours they can work in an annual year, and that is a total of 960 hours. That does limit us to how much that we can utilize this individual. However, we have another retired annuitant who actually just resigned, and so Orlando would be filling that position, and that previous position also only worked about 18 to 20 hours a week, so that 960 works out to, about 18 to 20 hours per week of work for us. So we certainly know that we can utilize that and not have to maximize it to the 29 hours a week. So due to the fact that he is a retired annuitant, it does require a resolution to be passed in order to bring him on. I understand I got news today that he passed all of his background, so he's ready to roll. This is kind of the last step in getting approval and getting him hired on. We do need the help because we are currently down 2 bus driver, both the bus driver 1 positions. So the sooner we can approve this, the better to get that position backfilled. So I'm happy to answer any questions if anyone has any.
Any questions from council?
Just a comment and a question. I know Orlando, and you couldn't have chosen a better person for this particular
Absolutely.
job.
Agreed.
So do we keep track of the 960? Or does he have to do that?
No, the city would keep track of it. So, between the transit department and finance, we would track his hours to make sure that he's not going over that. So, and if you calculate the 960 divided by 52 weeks, it comes out to 18 plus hours. So we'll make sure that we're monitoring those hours and staying under the 960 because we know that could definitely impact his retirement with CalPERS. You don't want to go over that number. So
they do not care. If you go over it, they are real bad about it.
And since I've had a history of going over part-time hours, I'll make sure that they stay under 960.
Thank you.
Yep.
Don't want your hand slapped, right? Any questions from council? Okay, open public comment. Any questions from the public? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Roll call vote, please.
To have a motion.
Oops, sorry. I'm just moving this meeting on. Can we have a motion?
I'll make a motion to adopt Resolution 2023-24 and read by title only.
Second.
Now roll call vote, please.
Resolution 2023-24, a resolution of the City Council of the City of Fortuna appointing retired annuitant Orlando Payne as extra help part-time bus driver Councilmember Conley?
Aye.
Councilmember Losi?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson?
Yes.
Mayor Trent?
Yes. Okay, our last item of business. Professional service agreement with California Counseling for Reconnecting Community Grant for the Kenmar Interchange Improvements. Staff report.
Thank you, Mayor Trent. So really, we want to take advantage of an opportunity of there being a lot of money out there for federal infrastructure projects. But I'll give you a little background on the projects first. The city's general plan identified the Kenmar interchange would need to be improved to accommodate the city's growth. There's a number of mitigations in the general plan, including improving the Kenmar interchange to bring that to an acceptable level of service for the city's planned growth. It's anticipated that that interchange with Highway 101 will not operate at an acceptable level without mitigation, and staff have been working continuously over the past several years to develop a plan for improving the interchange. Starting in 2016, we did a Sustainable Communities grant. We received a Sustainable Communities grant from Caltrans. We completed a complete street connectivity study that identified improvement alternatives for Kenmar in 101 and 12th Street in 101 that identified roundabouts as a preferred alternative. The city, subsequent to that, the city received and requested $550,000 to complete preliminary design and environmental documentation phase of the project in 2018, and that was just recently wrapped up. We may have a couple more little steps of things to do, but it's essentially complete, which is good news because it puts the project in a category, having that environmental documentation complete, that it's closer to being shovel ready. And so a lot of projects have a lot of trouble getting through that, so it puts us in a more competitive situation. The big deal, this is one of our big focuses because that interchange, having either Kenmar or 12th Street interchange with 101 is really important. We have things right now that we're working on, including a specific plan for the mill site. There's a lot of demand for housing, and what we expect to happen is that interchange will get beyond an acceptable level of service, and there'll be an impact if we don't do a project there. So we really want to make sure to get this done before we have that impact and we tell somebody, for example, no, you can't build that project, or no, you can't do that housing subdivision because you're going to have an unacceptable impact to traffic at our interchange. And they're a big project. The estimated cost about $25 million. And so because we don't have a traffic impact fee, just like every other community in Humboldt County, it's not that we don't have some fund where we've been putting money aside for years to try to save for this, but we're really dependent on state and federal grants. And so we think right now is a key opportunity to be able to do that. Congress passed the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act in 2021 that has directed an unprecedented level of funding for infrastructure projects in excess of $180 billion over the next 10 years. And just for an idea, California will receive from that $180 billion about 41.9, so $41.9 billion over 5 years. So there's a really good opportunity here. Staff have identified 2 grant programs funded under the IIJA, or Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, that would qualify, and those are the Reconnecting Communities grants. There's a federal portion, and then there's a state portion. The grants are due on September 20th and September 28th, respectively. Currently, we don't have the capacity to complete these grants in-house, and so we've been looking to find consultants. We've checked with our on-call consultants. They don't have the capacity or the expertise to be able to do that now, but we were able to connect with one consultant called California Consulting that does have the expertise and availability, and they've written these types of grants in the past. They actually have engineers, estimators, grant writers, so they have a pretty robust staff, and they work primarily in California. And one of the things that's interesting, a lot of times you have to estimate what a grant's going to cost, by the amount of effort. But this is the first time I've seen a grant company put together a table that says, okay, here's what our fee is for each grant. So over $250,000, it's between $9,000 and $12,000, which I think is a pretty reasonable amount to pay for a consultant to put forward into a grant for this effort. Because there's 2, I'm hoping that a lot of the work for these grants will be duplicate in each one of them, but they are different. The federal grant is really going to focus on a project, and we have a pretty well-defined project for the Kenmar interchange, again, a shovel-ready project. But the state portion, they're looking to identify a community, and Caltrans wants to help during that, as a part of that grant process, they select a community, not a project, and they want to think about what the needs for the community are and not limit it to a specific project. So what we're thinking on a staff level is that we incorporate portions of the Strongs Creek Trail, also known as John Campbell Memorial Greenway, the interchange, and what other projects might connect to that, perhaps portions of the Great Redwood Trail, but Caltrans would want to be involved and work with the city to identify what the components are. So we have the potential to grow that beyond just the interchange and potentially to include some of the trails within the city too that could get connectivity between our residential areas, the Great Redwood Trail, connect the Riverwalk area to this, to the opposite side of the highway, both the easterly and westerly sides of the highway. So they are going to be different grant applications. We're also going to be seeking to look for partners that could help us be more competitive too on that state level grant, whereas on the federal, we'll be partnering, and we submitted a request letter to partner with, have Caltrans as a project partner with that one. So they are a bit different. I think the price is reasonable, and time is really of the essence, and we want to take advantage of this opportunity with all these federal funds floating out there because we might not be in a better position to receive a grant like this. So the funding for the project, so my request is that is for $18,000. So I'm hoping we can get both of these projects done, for about 1.5 what their fee would normally be for a project of this size. And so that's a request. It would come from city general funds, and there's more than enough in the city's general fund reserves to do a project such as this. So I could provide more detail if you'd like, or if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer those.
Any questions from council?
Just clarification, the 25 million that you mentioned, is that just for the Kenmar interchange?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, open public comment. Oh, did you have a question?
Well, I was just going to say that this is huge because over the last few years, the legislature and HCD, Housing and Community Development, has been doing things and adding a line in where you cannot add an impact fee for new housing in some places. And so you end up with all the vehicles for the houses, but you don't have any mechanism to take care of the added vehicle miles traveled, the increasing number of cars, and this will help us clean that up. And then hopefully still when we get to the 12th Street interchange, some of that will still be available.
Yeah, and in our thinking of prioritizing Kenmar first, I mean, we really want to do both projects, but Kenmar would really alleviate the traffic. And this will hit the mark on a number of fronts. We have the mill site specific plan, which, the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act really wants to be able to help improve economic development. They want to improve housing and disconnected communities that have been bisected by highway facilities. And in particular, they want to really work with disadvantaged communities. So the city has the proper demographics. We're mapped in an area of persistent poverty, and the project's located within the federal mapping of areas of persistent poverty. We have other disadvantaged communities within the city that we're going to be looking to partner with to try to just help bolster this. And we've been, one of the other things, because we've done our CEQA document, we've been talking to the state about the state program. Because we have a higher level of completion than a lot of other projects out there, it's my hope that they will be competitive. There's a deadline for the state program to expend those funds by 2026, which would be tough. But I think if they look at all the projects and they look at ours, they're going to see how ready we are compared to a lot of the other projects. So we're going to keep our fingers crossed on this one. But, the alternative is, wait a much longer time and probably not have as much funding available in grant programs. So we're really going to push hard on this one.
Okay. We'll open public comment. Anybody from the public have any comments on this item? Seeing none, we'll close public comment. Do we have a motion?
I make a motion to authorize the city manager to negotiate and execute an agreement with California Consulting Incorporated to assist the city with 2 reconnecting community grants in the amount not to exceed $18,000.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Nope. We'll move to the city manager's report.
Okay, real briefly, go over the next upcoming meeting schedules. August 21st will be our next council meeting at 6:00 p.m. Our next planning commission and I believe that was canceled on August 8th. So that meeting was canceled due to lack of any items that we needed to have on that. The next Measure E meeting date is on September 19th. The next Roner Community Recreation and Park District meeting is on September 6th. And the next FBID meeting is on August 22nd at 8:30 a.m. So a few things to report. One of those is that the Fortuna Chamber of Commerce is reinitiating its lunchtime meetings, and their first speaker is going to be on August 21st. It's one of the new owners of the Fortuna Mill Commerce Center, formerly known as the Palco Mill Site. So the Chamber of Commerce sent out a newsletter, and if you want to go to that luncheon, it's open to the public and chamber members, but you have to, they have an RSVP kind of invite on their newsletter that you can hit. So it's important if our council members want to go to check that out to RSVP. And if you need a link or information, let me know if you need that. As Cameron mentioned, our basketball courts were completed on July 24th, and we opened those up. We ordered a sign recognizing Measure E for the funding. I ran some of the iterations of the signs by Walt and Joe just to make sure that they liked what they saw there. So we'll have a nice sign that's going to go up on that fence and recognizes Measure E, and it has a QR code so people can click that and find information about Measure E. It'll take them to the city's website for Measure E, and they can either volunteer, they can look at agendas, or look at what the purpose of that was for. I would say city staff has been acting as staff for the Roner Community Recreation and Park District. There's been some really exciting movement on that project. Primarily, the USDA appears that they're going to approve the pre-application, which we submitted on behalf of the district, which would invite the district to come to complete an application for loan funding. So this is really a pivotal step for the district. If this loan gets approved, then the district could move forward with doing a portion of the assessment and doing an assessment benefit district and putting that out to property owners to see if they want to fund a portion of the pool, and then also finalize agreements. Right now, it looks like McLean Foundation is going to step up and make a pretty significant ongoing contribution for a part of that. So it's been a few years that we've really been working with the district to get to this point where they can actually take something out to the public and say, hey, do you want this? And here's how much it's going to cost, and here's what we're going to provide for you. There's been feasibility studies. There'll be an engineer's report to distribute the benefits. So anyway, this is really the key piece, is finding that financing for the aquatic facility. And so it looks like we're going to see approval on that in the near future, which would really kick this project into high gear for the district. Let's see, one other thing you may notice soon, the Fortuna Business Improvement District, they did order some really nice banners. The committee has been working really hard. Unfortunately, Councilmember Mobley was ill, so she's not able to be here, but they've been providing a lot of feedback to our FBID director, and they actually ordered all the banners, but there's some really nice banners, some recognizing the activities in Roner Park and Newburgh Park and the Depot Museum, and then some seasonal banners like fall banners and that have kind of an apple theme, and a number of others. But they're really nice looking banners. It's going to be an upgrade from what we've seen in the past. And so those are going into production probably today, and we should see those banners go up in the near future, and they're going to have a number of banners. And there's also banners that recognize the police and appreciation for our police department and our fire department. And so we ran those by Chief Day and Chief Brown, and they both approved and gave those the thumbs up. So there's kind of a variety of banners. So we'll have some new fresh ones coming through, which is going to be really nice to see for the downtown area. I think that's all I have for my report.
Okay, thank you. Any future agenda items, anybody? No? Okay, we'll move to council reports. Councilmember Conley?
Thank you. We had a REDAC meeting a couple weeks ago, I believe. We got Matt Marshall from Redwood Coast Energy Authority was there, and talking about the statewide rural regional energy network and how that's kicking off, and pretty much Humboldt County is taking the responsibility for that over multiple counties throughout the state for all the rural regional networks on power supply. So it sounds like it's going to be a good thing for Humboldt County. Other than that, just missed the last meeting, being in Reading in 109, and I'm glad to be back into Fortuna.
Councilmember Losi?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was gone for a good part of July, so I was unable to attend the LAFCO meeting. My alternate did attend. and I didn't attend any other meetings, so mine is really short. Woo-hoo.
Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Johnson?
Well, mine's a little bit longer, but I'll try and keep it short. We did have a great special event season. I don't know how many people got to come out and enjoy the fireworks festival, the rodeo, and the auto expo, but they both were well attended. We had a lot of visitors in town. I was talking to some people at the auto expo who don't show cars, but they travel from out of the area to come to Fortuna for the car show and the other activities. And they said they'd be back next year. This was their third time around, and they're going to be back for a fourth. So people are doing things right, community-wise, special event-wise. Same thing, I just have to say that the city staff, the street department, the parks department just did a bang-up job getting things taken care of in all three events. And Bob and I both worked really close during the rodeo with the parks department, and those guys just got after it. So thank you for all that they do. And we have a wrap-up meeting at the rodeo and a board meeting this coming Thursday, and I'm pretty sure that that will be brought up board-wide. So thank you. I had a HCOG meeting in July, and I didn't make a lot of notes, but a couple of things. One was a report on I'm sure you've all seen the intermittent cones and delineators and striping and signs that say change ahead, and part of that was construction, but part of that was looking at ideas and plans to make Broadway a more friendly and pedestrian safe and bicycle safe area. And rather than just coming up with an idea, Caltrans is working closely with the public to find a solution for this that comes with public input. And so I heard something along the lines of 3,000 comments had been submitted. So they're taking it all into perspective. Another thing having to do with public support, this by CHP supporting the public. On Highway 36, HCOG through the SAFE program pays for supplemental patrols. And there was 16 supplemental patrols done on 36. They issued 25 citations, which I don't know how that falls in the number of average or not. But the thing that caught my attention was during that same 16 supplemental patrols, there were 69 public assists given on Highway 36, which is can be a pretty lonely area at times. And to have the CHP out there patrolling extra times really helps. And the 69 assists shows that. Same thing on Highway 96, which makes Highway 36 look like a well-traveled freeway. But they had 9 patrols there and 37 public assists. So there's value to be had through all of this. So just some of the things that you don't think about, but the Humboldt County Association of Governments is involved in that. So that's all I have to report at this time. Well, we do have another meeting coming up next week on the 17th. And we have something special coming up on the 18th, and I will let our mayor speak to that.
I was thinking, what's coming up on the 18th?
The League of California
Yeah.
Cities.
First, I want to say we had a nice demonstration out front of our building here today with 4 brand-new police cars that were mostly paid for by grants. Thank you very much, Chief, for writing those grants and getting us those cars and taking the ugly, what were those, Crown Vics off the street that didn't have any paint on them. And so the embarrassing cars are gone, and the new ones are out there, and the sergeants are very happy. Those are the ones that got those 4 new cars, and they look great. So you'll notice those out on the street. That was pretty exciting for our police department. And then I got to do something that was pretty exciting. I got to go to a Korean War vet pinning ceremony. It was held at the care home where one of the vets lived, and there was 2 Korean vets there, and I got to pin their little things on them, and they were such nice men. And they hadn't been recognized before, you know, so it was a big honor for them, and they were very excited for that. So that made me feel good to actually be part of that. And then the City of Fortuna is hosting our League of California Cities Redwood Division meeting on the 18th, which is, our division goes from Cloverdale to the Oregon border and inland to the lake. So we'll have mayors and council people from all of those cities visiting our city. So we want our parks to look very nice while they're here. So that's pretty exciting. I'm hoping most of our council will be there. And I think that's all I have to report. This was a very long meeting. What?
I need to add something to my report.
Okay. Okay.
I don't always deal with the police department, but during these 2 special events, the Auto Expo and especially the rodeo, the police department was deeply involved, especially with the rodeo and the carnival and the evening entertainment. And they did an excellent job, especially having to find people to actually be here because we have to patrol, they have to get security guards and supplemental people from other departments. I did like one comment that I did hear the chief make a while back, that the rodeo was pretty easy to deal with, but the carnival was the rough place. And I was glad to hear that, but I don't usually have to deal closely with the police department. There's a committee for that, but I did not want to forget to mention them. They did a bang-up job, so thank you.
Chief also did a really good job at reaching out to other agencies. It's nice to live in a community where all the agencies will come together whenever needed. So we had a lot of, I think from just about every agency, we had somebody here helping us out with our rodeo. So it's nice when we can all come together, and thank you, Chief, for organizing that. So I guess that's all we have for the night. We have a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.